Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Susie Gelman, and I'm privileged to serve as the board chair here at Israel Policy Forum. I want to welcome those of you who are joining Israel Policy Forum for the first time today, and welcome back our returning viewers. Before we begin, I want to thank our supporters because our work, including today's program, is made possible by you. And if you don't yet support our work, please do so by visiting www.israelpolicyforum.org/support. Now on to today's briefing. Last Monday, 6 Palestinian militants convicted of terror-related offenses escaped from Gilboa maximum security prison in northern Israel. The crisis has prompted alarm among Israeli security officials and the Israeli public, while Palestinians have taken to the streets to rally in solidarity with the fugitives. Simultaneously, we've witnessed an escalation on the Gaza front in response to the prison break, as renewed rocket attacks from Hamas have targeted Israeli cities. As of now, 4 out of the 6 fugitives have been captured with the help of Israeli Arabs, which in itself has caused serious controversy among West Bank Palestinians. From Israeli prisons to the West Bank to Gaza, tensions appear to be rising. To dive into this crisis and its implications, we are excited to be joined by Ohad Hemo, the Palestinian Affairs correspondent at Israel's Channel 12 News. So Ohad, welcome. As always, we encourage you to ask questions of our speaker. Please type your questions in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. Also, a recording of this broadcast will be published later on our website at israelpolicyforum.org/briefings. So with that, Ohad, once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
So let's start at the beginning. Please tell us about these 6 prisoners who escaped Gilboa prison. For what crimes were they imprisoned? And prior to their breakout, what were their reputations in both Israeli and Palestinian society?
Hello, everybody. Good evening, Susie. Great to meet you. Very pleased to be here today. I will answer your question, I promise, but I want just before to draw a line, which I think is the bottom line of this situation. That's the reason for this situation to be so, I would say, problematic. Look, I think that today we're in a very sensitive point of time or sensitive era in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. At the very first time since the last 15 years, I think, I'm a correspondent in the West Bank and Gaza Strip for the last almost 20 years. And I must tell you that during the last few years, I didn't feel any atmosphere, any energy of uprising, of intifada. The West Bank is traumatized by the second intifada, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the first time, I have to tell you, that I feel something, that we can see something that happened, and the escape of the prisoners is part of this thing. And I think that there's today a concern, I wouldn't say intifada or uprising, but a concern that the West Bank today is going towards another direction, let's say, much more rallies, much more terror attacks, et cetera, et cetera. Now, during the last few months, there were 3 things that I think it's very, very important to understand. First one was, of course, the last war in Gaza Strip. In the Palestinian ethos or the Palestinian narrative, this war, I'm talking about the war that has been 4 months ago, was a real victory, because for the very first time since the last dozens of years, the Palestinians in Gaza, Hamas in Gaza, managed to draw a line between all the places, between Gaza, between the West Bank, between East Jerusalem, the Israeli Arabs, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really concerned as a victory. And the Palestinians enter into a euphoria, a real euphoria. This is the first thing. The second thing was few weeks ago, whenever a Palestinian gunman in Gaza Strip managed to shoot to death an Israeli sniper, and he shot him from, I think, a distance of meter. And this picture was very iconic. It was took by two. I mean, there were 2 people who shot this picture. And while you're talking to the Palestinians, while you enter into, the, I don't know, Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, it was unbelievable. I mean, they really felt in Gaza Strip specifically, but also in the West Bank, that they had a victory, talking about euphoria. And now is the third picture, the picture of 6 people that are escaping from one of the most secure prisons in Israel, managing to run away from this place. This is an iconic picture. This is a victory picture. And why do I start with this thing? Because I think that if we look at the past, the Palestinians, whenever they felt that there is a victory, that Israel is weak, that they I don't know, they won Israel, even in a tactical small battle, it encouraged them towards, I don't know, towards uprising, towards terror attacks, towards a wave of terror, and so on. And this is very important thing to understand. What's the importance of this event that we're talking about right now? And I just want to add one more thing before we dive into this topic. Last time that the Palestinians really felt that they won, it was in the year of 2017. There was this magnometer crisis in Al-Aqsa, in the entrance of Al-Aqsa. They really won. That's what they felt. Thousands of people in Jerusalem, Palestinian people, Palestinian Jerusalem, from Jerusalem, they managed to push Israel and to prevent what Israel planned to do. 6 months later, we've seen the war in Gaza Strip, I wouldn't say war, but the march of return. And I draw this line. We won in East Jerusalem. 6 months later, in Gaza Strip, Gaza is feeling that they can, that they can do something, they can change the reality. And this is, I think, the risk in this situation whenever the other side, the Palestinians, really feel that they are in euphoria, they are winning. And what we've seen a week ago was, like iconic picture of win. Now, for your question, Susan, we're talking about 6 people, 5 members of the Islamic Jihad, and 1 member from Al-Aqsa Mate Brigades, which is the Fatah, the rule party of the PA, the Fatah, but the majority are from the Islamic Jihad organization. Just one word: Islamic Jihad is the most extremist party in the Palestinian arena. Comparing to Islamic Jihad, Hamas is like Zionist. Believe me, this organization really believe with the destruction of Israel. They are connected to Iran directly. To Iran, I had some sources in Islamic Jihad. I know people that went to Iran in order to have some courses, etc., etc. So it's really connected to this, to Iran. We're talking about an organization which is almost only an odd wing. I mean, not as Hamas, which is a real party. Islamic Jihad. By the way, the support of the Islamic Jihad in the West Bank, for instance, is between 2 to 4%. That's it. It's very small organization, mostly in the North and West Bank. And most of its people are not, I don't know, clerics or something else. They are, fighters or terrorists. You could call them whatever you want. And we're talking about 5 Islamic Jihad members that a day before they escaped, the 6th one, which is Zacharias Bedi, very famous name in Israel, he joined to this group. All of the 6 came from the area of Jenin, which is North and West Bank. Now, what is important, you asked me, Susan, 4 of them are convicted to life sentence. I mean, being in life sentence for convicted by killing an Israelis or taking part of terror attacks that Israelis were killed by them. One of them, by the way, and this is one of the 2 guys who was not found until now, he was planning to blow up an Israeli bus, civilian Israeli bus, and was arrested. So 4 of them are in life sentence, has life sentence in the jail, and 2 other people, the trial is still going on. Now, these guys managed with a small spoon, to dig a tunnel. Now, one should understand that we're talking about a prison because of the underground water. This prison, it's got holes and it's got a space. So they managed to use this space, which is underground, in order to dig this tunnel and to escape. Now, there's a huge gap between what they've done, I mean, the way they did it, and they did it really smartly, and the fact that from the point that they went out of the prison, they didn't know what to do. And I was asking a good source of mine, which is Hamas member. He was sitting, by the way, with some of them in the prison in the past. I was asking him, how can these guys, which is very smart, and if you are in the prison, believe me, for 24 hours a day or even 25 hours a day, the only thing that you're thinking is how do you escape? So you managed to do it. You were digging it between 6 to 12 months. That's what in the estimate in Israel. And after they reach out, they have no plane. So what's going on here? And what this guy told me, he told me that you're talking about one of the most, how did you say, secret and departmentalized organizations. So they cannot make any phone call outside. I mean, if they do it, they know that the Shin Bet is sitting and wiring every conversation. So they cannot really touch whoever is out there just to ask him to bring car or something. That they should be independent. And one asks himself, how come that these 5 guys from the Islamic Jihad, they are joining a guy from the Fatah? And I want to tell you something about Zacharias Bedi. Zacharias Bedi, very famous guy in Israel. He was the leader of Al-Aqsa Maktimati brigades in the refugee camp of Jenin. He was, I would say, the biggest icon of the second intifada for the Israeli public. Why? Because he is an odd guy. He has charisma. I personally made, I think, 15 reports with this guy while he was wanted by the Israelis, and Israel tried to assassinate him or to kill him for a few times. They met him a day later. He was always armed. And this guy, he knows Hebrew. And this guy has, some would say, a lover or a female friend from Israel, a left-wing activist. So all of these things created him in the year of 2002, 2003, 2004 as a real hero for the Palestinians, but the icon for the, for the intifada, for the armed intifada for the Israelis. And this guy, the most famous wanted Palestinian, is part of this group that escaped from the prison, which is very interesting. And one asks himself, how come that these guys from the Islamic Jihad took Zacharias Bedi with them? And the answer that I got from the other side, from the Palestinian side, is that Zacharias Bedi has a lot of things in the refugee camp of Jenin. He has connections, he has people, he has money, he has arm, he has guns and everything. I met him. He told me that he's got so many guns and machine guns and rocket launchers, etc., etc. So he's very strong there. And you could understand that if they took him with them, it means that they want to escape to Jenin refugee camp. Now, Jenin refugee camp is the most. Susan, by the way, if you want to add something or to ask something, please.
I will.
Feel
but
free.
I mean, no, this is great. It's Susie, by the way.
Susie, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
So I would say that Jenin refugee camp is the most dangerous place today in the West Bank. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the only place in the West Bank these days, every entrance of the IDF, just to arrest someone, to take someone, to investigate someone, or etc. Every time that the IDF is entering this camp, they're shooting towards the IDF. Almost every time during the last few months that the IDF entered, there were Palestinian dead gunmen that were shot dead by the Israelis because they were shooting towards the IDF. This is a place that has nothing to lose. This is a crazy place, believe me. I've got a piece I can show you later, but it's a crazy place. It's in the rural area of the West Bank. It's the northern West Bank. Very poor place, very poor place. These guys, the armed guys, they're talking about people 20, 21, 22 years old. They have nothing to lose. Each one of them has his own Kalashnikov, AK-47, etc. And they have nothing to lose. And the atmosphere these days, today, I was talking to people from the Jenin refugee camp. They told me they're feeling that the atmosphere is like the second Intifada, same thing. They tell me that there are hundreds of gunmen in the street today in this refugee camp. This is the only place in the old West Bank that the PA, Palestinian Authority, maybe beside another refugee camp called Balata, but this is the major place that the PA, Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, they cannot enter there. The security forces of the PA, the Palestinian Authority, cannot enter into this place, into the refugee camp of Jenin. Who is ruling it? These guys, 20, 22, 24 years old guys, gunmen, anarchy. There's a real anarchy. In Arabic, we call it fawda. You know, I guess this name. So fawda in Arabic is anarchy. And there's a great anarchy there. The Israelis almost does not enter. The Palestinians does not enter. And it doesn't matter if you're Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Fatah. You are, I mean, the first identity of yourself is, I'm from Jenin refugee camp. And this is the only place there in the West Bank that you can find Islamic Jihad members with guns. The only place. The other places, the IDF enters and take them, each one, or the PA, or the Palestinian Authority. This is the only place that we believe that Zacharias Bedi and the other 5 members want to escape to. Okay, this is the only place that can, I don't know how to, I mean, at the end of the day, the IDF is very strong. Its intelligence in the West Bank is very strong. It's not Gaza Strip, it's something totally different. The Israeli army today can do whatever it wants in the West Bank. That's, you should understand. And today, no wanted Palestinian could hide himself for more than, I would say, 1 week or 2 weeks. That's it. I mean, the IDF is so strong in this field, in the West Bank. And if I ask myself, if I was a wanted guy that just escaped a few minutes ago from the Israeli prison into northern Israel, and by the way, Jenin is in northern West Bank, which is not far, where's the first place that I would go? Jenin refugee camp. This is the only place that can guard me. Okay, by the way, 2 days ago, Jenin, these guys from Jenin, they published, in Arabic, you call it bayan. My Arabic is better than my English, by the way. But I'm kidding. But they published a paper, I don't know, that calls these guys, these 2 guys that's still out there, come to the Jenin refugee camp because he's the only place that we can really defend you. We can, on our blood and our bodies, we will defend you. So come, please. That's what they say. And by the way, in the Israeli intelligence forces, in the Shin Bet and the IDF, they believe that one of these guys, 2 guys, managed to cross the green line and to reach to Jenin area. I'm not sure if to the camp, but to Jenin area, that's for sure. So this is the reason that we see the IDF is acting in this place. By the way, this guy his trail is still going on. I mean, he's not convicted by killing or something, but he used to be a thief, actually a thief of cars. He brought cars from Israel to Jenin, so he really knows well the barrier, the fence between Israel and the West Bank. And I was talking to a friend of Zacharias Bedi, one of these guys, and he told me, Zachariah, he made a mistake. He was wrong because he should go with this guy. If he would have go with this guy, for sure now both of them would have been here in this refugee camp. Please.
I have a lot of follow-up questions just to this intro. And by the way, they obviously know the identity of the other Islamic jihadist prisoner, right, who's still at large. But you're saying they don't, you're saying one of them seems to have gotten to Jenin refugee camp, as best we can tell. The other is still at large, or whereabouts are unknown. Yes?
We know that one of them, or we don't know, but we estimate, or Israel estimates, and the Palestinians as well, by the way, the rumors say that both of them managed to reach the West Bank, but Israel, the IDF, believes that one of them at least managed to cross the green line to enter into the West Bank, to the area of Jenin. Not sure if they managed to go to reach to the camp, but to the area of Jenin. And this is the reason that during the last 48 hours, we've seen a lot of activity of the IDF in the West Bank looking for these guys. The other one maybe is still in Israel. So also you could find, this activity in Israel, because he's much more dangerous, the guy who are in Israel right now.
So I want to ask a few follow-up questions about what clearly was a significant breach in the security of this maximum security prison. I mean, this kind of thing just shouldn't happen.
Right.
And a couple of items I've read in the Israeli press, one that a guard tower at Gilboa was unmanned. And of course, once they got out of the prison, I mean, it took a while to discover that they were missing, but then they're wandering around in some field or someplace, right?
Yeah.
What can you tell us about what were the and the other question is that I've also read some criticism about the fact that these prisoners were incarcerated at Gilboa because it is so close to Jenin, as opposed to some other maximum security prison, whether it be in the Negev or someplace else, where it wouldn't have been so easy
Yeah.
for them to get help. And, if you say one of them looks like he's in Jenin refugee camp and the other one is unaccounted for. So there obviously are a lot of questions circulating around, and clearly there's going to be a real investigation in terms of what
Yeah.
went wrong. But can you just address some of what you think went wrong? How is this even possible?
So first of all, the reason for these guys from Jenin originally to come to be in this prison specifically, I think that the reason for this is that the Israeli prison how do you call it? The Israeli the National Detainee Authority. Yeah, exactly. So they want to ease the visits of the families of these detainees. So if the family is from Jenin, they want to make it easier for them to come to visit, once in a while they're visiting their relatives inside the prison. So if you're from Jenin, we prefer to make your life easier, so you can come and visit him not far from Jenin, and not in the Negev, for instance, which is a long distance. Okay, so this is one of the reasons. As you said, there are so many problems in this situation. Right, the guard was these towers were empty. The other one, there was a female guard that was sleeping. There was, some TVs, internal TVs. So the guard that should have looked at the TVs, he didn't look at it. And as I said before, there's underground water. Now, the plans of this place, of this prison, were published in the internet, which is unbelievable. I mean, we're not talking about, I don't know which country in the third world, we're talking about Israel, and yet one could enter into the internet and see how Israel built this place. I was talking, by the way, to one of the major people in this prison that used to serve there few years ago, and it just reminded me that in the year of 1998 there was exactly the same thing. There was an attempt to escape, exactly the same thing, and no one did anything in order to change this fact of this situation. Now, I just said before, there's a gap between the way they planned it and what happened out there. I believe that these guys didn't believe that Israel will find, or the police, as we said before, the Israeli prison service, they will find that they escaped just 3 hours later. I believe that they thought that 15 minutes later, the whole world will know that they escaped. So this is the reason for them not to try to cross to Jenin immediately, but to go to the other side. They went to northern Israel instead of trying to enter into the West Bank, which is, you ask yourself, how come? I mean, this is so easy. You can take even walking, but you can take any car. And I can tell you, in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you are inside Jenin refugee camp. There are so many holes in the barrier, the separation barrier in this area specifically. I made so many reports there. You're standing next to the barrier. Now I'm in Israel, crossing, now in the West Bank. And there's a hole. And the workers usually, I don't know if you know, but in Israel there are between 30 to 40,000 workers that enters every day with no permission, just in these holes. So I believe that these guys, the prisoners, the terrorists, they didn't believe that they will have 3 hours, which is long time. You could go to Gaza in this time, in this period of time. You could go walk to Gaza, or I don't know, to Syria. You know that the headquarters of the Islamic Jihad is in Syria. So at one point, Israel thought that maybe they're trying to cross the border from the Golan High to Syria, because this is very, very, very makes sense, I would say. But they didn't, because they thought that they will be captured very easily, which wasn't the case.
So if that's the theory, that they didn't expect to be successful and actually get away from the prison, they just thought they were going to get out of the prison and then get recaptured. Obviously you haven't had the chance to interview any of them yet, but I expect you will at some point. What would that have been all about? Just to embarrass the Israeli prison authority, to make some sort of a statement about that the prison was porous and vulnerable? I mean, what would be the
No. I think it's much more than this. I believe that they believe that at the end of the day they could do it. They could make it. And what we know from the investigation of these guys is that they were walking for 7 kilos after they escaped. There was these guys, 6 of them, all of them, they were working for 7 kilos towards village, Arab village, Israeli Arab village, Naura its name. And there they wanted to get a car from there to cross to Jenin, but they didn't manage. Why? Because they didn't get any cooperation. And this is one of the most interesting issues in this event. Why? Because these guys counted the fact that they will get assistance or help from the Israeli Arabs. And at the very first days after they escaped, the Israeli authority blamed Arabs that they helped them and they assisted them, and they I don't know, gave them some food. And there were footage of these guys, the prisoners, in one of the mosques in Naura, for instance. So the IDF, or not the IDF, the police actually in the Shin Bet, they investigated these guys because they assisted them. And they found out that they did assist them without knowing that we're talking about the prisoners. So the guys in this village in Naura helped, the prisoners without knowing that they are prisoners. They saw, poor people, I don't know, Arab Muslim people that wanted food and money and whatever, and they gave them without knowing that their identity. But they counted the fact that they will get assistance from the Israeli Arabs. And what happened at the end of the day is that 4 of them were captured. There were 2 couples, 4 of them were captured. And the first couple that were captured, one of them was one of the guys, his name is Mahmoud Arda. Mahmoud Arda is a killer, believe me. He is a real terrorist from the Islamic Jihad. He was the head of the group. He was the one who, as in the Islamic Jihad said, that this guy planned everything, and he was the commander of this of this majmua in Arabic, this group. And he was captured there. And who told the police that they're hiding there? Israeli Arabs. A day later, I went to Kalkilia. Kalkilia is a city in the West Bank, Palestinian city, not that far from Jenin. And I was asking these guys in Kalkilia, what do you say about the Israeli Arabs that assisted Israel? Because they're in Israel, at the end of the day, they're Israeli citizens. And they said that they are betrayers. And they said, we couldn't believe that our brothers helped Israel, the Zionist, I don't know, whatever they call us. They helped Israel to capture these freedom fighters. And it's all only a matter of narratives, always. But this is very interesting. By the way, Susie, if I could show something, is it okay?
Absolutely.
So we were talking about the Jenin refugee camp, right? And this is, the headquarters of the Islamic Jihad. I want to show you something. I'm sorry that I'm not modest, but I think that, I'm the only Israeli journalist who managed ever to make interviews with Islamic Jihad members from the refugee camp of Jenin. A few years ago, it was very interesting. Rulers of the camp. I just want to show you this, please. With your permission, believe me, it is interesting. So it will take me really a sec. And it's translated to English, so you could see it. This is the refugee camp.
شو بتعمل هون؟
بنفر بهالمخيم.
لكن هذا مش حقيقي مبين.
مش حقيقي.
لعبة أطفال؟ وانتوا ايش؟ شو دوركم؟
مقاومة.
המטרה העיקרית היא שליטי המחנה בפועל שמפציעים משום מקום כמו רוחות רפאים. מה שאתם רואים זה כבר גז מדמיע שכוחות הרשות יורים לכיווננו. הידיים של חלק מהאנשים כאן גם מטענים מאולתריים. טוב, אפשר כבר לשמוע את הירי של כוחות הביטחון הפלסטינים שמתקרבים, נכנסים לכאן לפתח המחנה. כל הצעירים נמצאים שם, שומעים כאן ירי חי, אז אנחנו ברשותכם הולכים למצוא מחסה. אנחנו רצים למצוא מחסה בתוך סמטאות המחנה, אלא שדווקא שם, ללא התראה מוקדמת, אנחנו מוצאים את עצמנו בלב הקרב, ודווקא בצד של חמושי המחנה, אנשי פתח, ולצידם, אנשי חמאס וג'יהאד איסלאמי. כן, אתם יכולים לראות את החמושים האלו, אנשי ג'יהאד איסלאמי מאחורינו. הרשות הפלסטינית נמצאת במרחק של משהו כמו 300-400 מטר. אפשר כבר לראות ממש כניסה למצב, לירי. יש כאן ממש מלחמה אמיתית על המחנה. ברגע זה אפשר לשמוע את קולות הירי. السلام عليكم. حرب حقيقي.
صحيح.
ايش في هسه؟
كان في معنا مهرجان نصرة الأقصى. طبعا اتدخلوا هذول السلطة. احنا بنعتبر من اللحظة هاي انهم هذول شركاء مع الاحتلال.
So I just wanted you, with your permission. No.
شو بتعملوا هون؟
بنفر بهالمخيم.
Sorry. So I just wanted you to understand what is refugee camp and what is Islamic Jihad members. These guys exactly are the guys that we're talking about them right now. Please, Susie.
Well, Ohad, I mean, that must have been terrifying, even for someone like you who goes into Jenin more than once, but still, you were caught in the middle of this battle. And by the way, how did it end?
There were casualties, of course. After an hour and a half there, I was actually escaping from there. I was invited, by the way, by Islamic Jihad member that told me that you could come, and believe me, we're gonna assist you going out from there. I mean, no one is gonna hurt you, and that's right. But I didn't believe that I'm gonna find myself in the middle of gun battle between the PA on the one hand and the Islamic Jihad members on the other hand. It was craziness.
Yes, it's the Wild West on steroids.
It is. And this is like 10 minutes from Afula, which is a city in Israel.
So I have some more questions, but since we were talking about the Israeli Arabs who you said basically they unwittingly helped the escapees. They didn't know that they were escapees. But we do have a question from the audience that I will just ask, and then I will ask some more of my own. So actually, this is sort of the opposite. This is Gabriela Goliger who's asking, why did Israeli Arabs not help the escapees? And are there any consequences to Israeli Arabs for doing so? And are there consequences for Jewish-Arab relations in Israel? And I would just add what I asked at the beginning, because, we saw in May that there was an alignment between Israeli Arabs, or if you call them Israeli-Palestinians and West Bank Palestinians. I just want to add a layer to Gabriel's question. Has this in any way had an impact on that as well?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because at the end of the day, we're talking about, one family that that really told, the Israeli police that that maybe the two terrorists are hiding there. But if you ask, the Palestinians, wherever, they're telling you, or they're blaming, most of them are blaming, the Israeli Arabs or the Palestinian Arabs in Israel, definitely. You're asking about the consequences. It's a good question, I must tell you. I don't know, but I can tell you that Jenin, for instance, is a city that every Shabbat, we're talking about thousands of Israeli Arabs who are entering into Jenin to buy some food, to buy some clothes, just to hanging around, to have some fun, whatever. We're talking about 3 billion shekels that the Israeli Arabs put every year in the Palestinian Authority, okay? With mostly because they buy, everything is very cheap there, and they've got families there, etc., etc. So the Palestinian economy, in a way, I wouldn't say based, but Jenin, for instance, is a place that its economy is based on the Israeli Arabs. And now we're talking about, a big gap, I would say. And really, they're really angry at them. They're really angry at them. Is it something to do with what happened 4 months ago? I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know. I know that if we try to analyze what happened 4 months ago, I think that I wouldn't say, that, at the end of the day, we're talking about 1.8 million Israelis that are Arabs or Muslim Israelis, 1.8 million. And how many of them we found the streets in these riots? We found some few thousands, not more. Yes, it was a serious thing. And it was a break between the Israelis, the Jews and the Arabs. Definitely, there was a crisis between these two, populations. But at the end of the day, we're talking about few thousands, not more, in all around. I'm not sure what's the connection or how it connects what happened 4 months ago and what happens these days about in this situation.
But just to be clear, you're saying that the Israeli Arabs who were accused of helping these escapees, at least they claimed that they didn't know who they were. So they were just helping people that they didn't know they were escaped prisoners.
Yeah.
But then the question is, will they be believed?
Yeah, the Shin Bet believe them. The
Shin Bet will believe them. Will West Bank Palestinians believe them? That's a separate question.
It's a good question. Yeah.
Let me ask a couple more, and then I have some more audience questions. So I want to ask a little bit about the ramifications from this security breach, because obviously it was a significant security breach. I would imagine that there will be all kinds of investigations, and some people are going to lose their jobs over this. What, Ohad, first of all, what is the likelihood of this happening again in your estimation? And what has been the response from Israel's security establishment to date?
If it will be happen again, I don't know. But I believe that now the guards are going to be much more carrier and just, there are a lot of measures that should have been done on the ground in order to prevent this kind of a thing. And as we know, they didn't manage to prevent it. I believe that, during for sure for the next few years, we will not face anything like this. I'm quite sure. But what we're seeing right now is a punishment measures of Israel. And, the prisons we're talking about today, 4,500 prisoners. I wouldn't say political prisoners, I would say terrorists that are sitting in the Israeli prison. 4,500. 400 of them are Islamic Jihad members. So what the Israeli prison service have done is to distribute them among all the other, factions. So you can find them not alone, as they used to be until today, but they took 2 or 3 or 4 prisoners of the Islamic Jihad, they put them in the cell of Hamas, or in cell of Fatah, or in cell of the Popular Front, etc., etc. So Israel is punishing these guys. And what I was in the TV just an hour ago, I was telling about the hunger strike, because now the Palestinians prisoners, they're planning a hunger strike. It's a really serious one. It's gonna start on this Friday, We're talking about more than 1,000 prisoners that are going to enter into the hunger strike. We're talking about it's united. I mean, there's unity there. Fatah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, all of them together, they are taking part of this hunger strike. Next week, some of them will stop drinking water. And if you're talking about frontiers, so this is a really, really, explosive situation. The prison. So you've got the prison, you've got the West Bank, as we said, you've got Gaza Strip. We didn't say any word about the Gaza Strip. This is, I think, the most this major thing today, or not only today, during the last decade or even more. So you've got Gaza and prisons and West Bank, and each one of them is affecting the other. That's for sure. And so we're going to face a hunger strike from this Friday. And the reason for this hunger strike is because the prisoner says, okay, you want to punish the Islamic Jihad, please do it. But, I've got good sources in my phone. I've got a few numbers actually, of prisoners, Israeli prisoners in the Israeli prisons. Palestinians, of course, people that sitting for life sentences, really. And they've got these phones that they manage to sneak inside the prison, and they make phone call to me and they update me and whatever. And today I was talking to someone from the Fatah Tanzim. He's sitting for life sentence, this guy, and he told me, well, look, they are punishing, the Israelis are punishing all of us, 4,500 prisoners. Why? We didn't do anything. You have a problem with Islamic Jihad, please solve it with them. But why should you punish me? I mean, you made this in Arabic. You say we call it fadiha. You made this problem. No, how would you translate fadiha?
Is it a riddle puzzle?
Yeah, a riddle. I think so. Yeah. So you've done it.
I don't speak Arabic, by the way.
This is not my fault. They say this is not my fault. So why do you punish me? I'm from the Fatah. Why should you punish me? Why you should punish the Hamas prisoners? You can punish the Islamic Jihad prisoners. So this is the reason for the prisons to enter into this hunger strike, and it could be something which can be a little bit explosive, I would say. So this era, this period of time is very, very sensitive, as I said before.
Oh, and you referred to Gaza, and I was going to ask you a question about that because, of course, in addition to the rallies of support across Palestinian cities in the West Bank, the prisoners' escape has once again prompted the launch of rockets and incendiary balloons from Gaza into Israel, targeting civilian population centers. So what does Hamas see as its role in this story, and what is it trying to accomplish? And finally, what does this say about the interplay of events between the West Bank and Gaza?
Okay. So I would say that Gaza you cannot solve the problem of Gaza as long as Hamas is sitting there. As far as I believe, Hamas, is a terror organization. You could not do or negotiate in each way with this organization. Never. So what Hamas wants is to break the siege. They says that there's a siege since Hamas took over Gaza Strip in the year of 2007. The people in Gaza Strip, 2.1 million people, they cannot go out. There's a siege, as Hamas says, and they want to break it. How do you break it? I mean, they want to sit, and to create this a new reality. But Israel not willing to do it. So what we see when we find ourselves each few months in a battle. Now, Hamas is getting $30 million each month for years. Is getting this money from the Qatarians. They used to deliver it while during the last Israeli government, Netanyahu's government. They got used to get this money, cash flow with the suitcase that enters from Qatar through Israel into Gaza. And the current government of Israel says we don't want, until now, until this point of time. This time we don't want to do it again. So what would we do? We can deliver the $30 million. We're talking about $10 million for oil, okay, for gas, and this Israel allows to deliver. $10 million to poor families in Gaza Strip, and Israel is willing to deliver it, not cash money, but through cards or something like credit cards, and the UN is the organization who delivers this money. But the problem is the last $10 million. We're talking about monthly, $10 million. This money used to go to the I would say workers of Hamas, clerics of Hamas, doctors, teachers, people who works for Hamas, for the organization of Hamas. Israel does not allow them to get the money, and Hamas does not like the fact that Israel is not allowing him to get the money. Yehia Sinwar, he is the head of Hamas in Gaza Strip. He's the head of Hamas. Is the strongest guy in Hamas today, all over. I think Yehia Sinwar. This is the guy. 23 years in the Israeli jails. By the way, he's really. How do you say it? I mean, the prisoners, the issue is really close to his heart. Let's call it like this. So this guy, Sinwar, says, okay, I want the money. You don't want to deliver me the money? Okay, let's have a war. But he does not really want war. Gaza does not want war, believe me, it does not. So he's trying to go and to offense Israel in these things that not launching rockets, because launch rockets means, I don't know, escalation that can lead to a war. And whoever launched the rockets towards Israel during the last few weeks was Islamic Jihad, by the way, not Hamas. But what Hamas allows these guys to do, to flow their balloons and all over this measures, in order to make Israel feel that, okay, we have to solve the problem. We have to solve the problem of money. Hamas, as I said, and this is very important to understand, Hamas does not want war. It's not serving them, not at all. Even though they felt that, after the last war, we were the winners, etc., etc. You know that after the last war, 4 months ago, Egypt promised $500 million to Gaza. And the Qatarians promised $500 million to Gaza. You know how much money entered into Gaza until now? Even 1 shekel didn't enter. So the whole world is promising. But after these operations of war, I know this is only a semantic thing, but after these things, Gaza is in a serious situation, problematic situation, because no one really wants to deliver money. After the war in 2014, the world promised $5 billion. And what was on the ground is that they deliver only $1 billion. So Gaza does not want war, but it wants its money. And Israel, until now, until this point, does not want to deliver the money. By the way, 2 days ago, we heard that maybe they're trying to deliver it by the PA, Palestinian Authority, the banks of the PA, but the PA today says, no, we don't want to deliver the money. Why? Because we're afraid that the Americans will sue us because we deliver money to a terrorist organization. Very complicated. But the bottom line, it's all matter of money. I'm a Marxist. It's a Marxist way of thinking. It's money, money, money.
Yeah.
Places.
By the way, one more question about Islamic Jihad in the West Bank versus Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship? How centralized is Islamic Jihad? Or do the Gaza and West Bank operations, they function somewhat independently? Can you just shed a little light on that?
I really love your questions, Susie, because it's like an expert questions.
I'm getting help too.
So as I said, Islamic Jihad is very small organization. In the West Bank, they almost not exist. I said between 2 to 4% of support among the general population. Very small organization, mostly in the North and West Bank. But they used to do a lot of suicide bombs, or a lot of suicide bombers used to be among the Islamic Jihad in the second uprising, the second Intifada, not anymore, of course. But it's a small and not really important organization in the West Bank. In Gaza Strip, it's something totally different. In Gaza Strip, we're talking about over 10,000 armed men for the Islamic Jihad. It's small army. We're talking about the only organization in Gaza Strip that competes Hamas with its missiles, compete Hamas with its tunnels, compete Hamas with everything. I mean, the only organization that digged tunnels, that were offensive tunnels, that was trying to penetrate Israel from Gaza Strip talking about the tunnels, the offensive tunnels, the only organization that can allow himself to do it, one can understand that we're talking about millions of dollars each tunnel like this. It costs millions of dollars. The only organization that has the money, has the ability. I'm not talking about Hamas. The other, beside Hamas, is the Islamic Jihad, and we're talking about over 10,000 well-trained warriors, armed men, terrorists, call it whatever you want, but it's a small army, and they're challenging Hamas. These guys are challenging Hamas. Now, I believe that at the end of the day, there's few scholars in Israel. How do we consider Gaza? As far as I understand, Hamas is the God of Gaza. You can do nothing in Gaza Strip. You cannot move this pencil from here to there without the knowledge of Hamas, without Hamas knowing it and allowing it. You cannot do it. Hamas is really strong, it's so strong. But the only faction, the only organization, the only people that can challenge Hamas in a way is Islamic Jihad, but not that strong. I want to take you a few months ago, one of them, it wasn't operation, but one of the escalations between Israel and Gaza Strip was the Islamic Jihad was in the frontier and Hamas was sitting on it got involved. And you could see that Israel smashed them. I mean, it's in Hebrew we say the lokuchot. I mean, it's not really, Israel, Islamic Jihad is not. Hamas is much stronger, and if you're asking me about the situation, the relationship between Gaza and the West Bank with the Islamic Jihad, I met a guy from the Islamic Jihad. I've done an interview with him that tried to launch a rocket from Jenin refugee camp. It was a few years ago, from Jenin towards Afula, to launch a rocket, Qassam rocket, missile. And I asked him, how did you build it? He told me, in Gaza, they delivered me the instructions through the internet. But beside, I think that there isn't really operational relationship between Gaza and the West Bank. It's much more ideological, because at the West Bank, the Islamic Jihad is not that strong, not at all.
So we have another question, Ohad, from a member of our audience. Joe Truzman asks, do you believe the killings of Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigades militants in the West Bank in recent months by Israeli security forces has led to an increase in instability in the area?
Look, something happened during the last few, even weeks, not months, in the West Bank. I can tell you that during the last 2 months, there were over 40 Palestinians who were shot dead by Israel. And we reached to a point that the chief of the army, he called, all the commanders that working in the West Bank and told them, wait a minute, this is not right. People are being killed very easily in the rallies or in demonstrations or whatever. So please talk to your, to your snipers, talk to your people, to the people in the IDF. Just to relax them. So you could tell that, yeah, something happens. There's kind of escalation, I would say. But it's nothing to do with, I think, as far as I understand, it's nothing to do with the assassinations of killings of Islamic Jihad and Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigade. It's not that point. I think that the situation, the escape situation, the escape episode, it's really what pushed the whole area towards escalation, not something that happened before. If I think that I answered the question.
What has the conversation around this story been like within Israeli and Palestinian society, both in the regular media and on social media, or I should say the conventional media and social media? And what does this suggest about the long-term impact of this crisis on Israeli-Palestinian relations?
I'm not sure that for the long term, it will really impact. I'm not sure, but I can tell you something like this. Young Palestinians today, they look at Zacharias Bedi, okay? Zacharias Bedi was not, I mean, he was famous in Israel, mostly in Israel, not in the West Bank, not that much in the West Bank. Today, he's almost like a martyr. He's alive, he's not dead. But they treat him like almost like God. I'm not kidding. And a small young Palestinians today, they're watching these guys and they say, I want to become like them. They became the heroes. They became the heroes of the street in the Palestinian, in the PA, in the West Bank, and in Gaza Strip. Gaza, of course, but also in the West Bank. I could tell you that after the last operation in Gaza 4 months ago, the support among the Palestinian population of Hamas became like 60%. So if there were elections after 3 months ago, 60% of the Palestinians in the West Bank were Hamas supporters. Why? Because they managed by their ethos, by their narrative, to defeat Israel. And these guys managed, even though they were captured at the end of the day, these guys are becoming heroes. And if you ask me, Susie, how, I mean, if it will have any influence in the future, this kind of influence, I think, the fact that a young guy from refugee camp or from a city or from a, I don't know, Palestinian city or village, he looked at Zacharias Bedi or these guys from the Islamic Jihad and says, I want to become like them. They're famous. And I don't know, they, in Arabic you say karama, like the, you know, they make us proud. Okay, we were very small, and now we can look at the Israelis and say, we managed to escape from prisons. Okay, I want to become like you. And this is, I think, the most risky thing. And whenever I talk to the people in Jenin, and they tell me that now this very specific moment, right now, 10 o'clock evening in Israeli time, we're talking about hundreds, if not more, than of armed men, young, 20 years old, that are walking there. I don't know, trying to defeat them, trying to control the camp, and they're going to launch some shooting at the IDF in Jalameh for the last few days, few nights. We've seen something like this. This is the language of Intifada, okay? Terror attacks, launching, shooting towards the IDF. We didn't see it for a decade. And right now, these days, for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 nights, you could see explosives, you could see terror attacks of shooting towards the IDF and then going back to the camp. This is a new language, an Intifada language. And that's what the reason that I started and said that I think that this is a very sensitive period of time.
Well, Ohad, you certainly give us not just a lot of information, but certainly some cause for concern. I have to say this hour flew by, so we definitely want to get you back. And if you have more videos that you would like to share with our audience, please feel free to pass them along. I thought the one you shared was gripping, to put it mildly. So really, Ohad, Hamon Toda, thank you for your time and for joining us today. And I know you have some place to go, and I hope you will be safe in your going and your coming back. Once again, I want to thank our supporters who are with us on today's call, because your generosity makes what makes programs like this one possible. And again, if you've not yet done so, please consider making a contribution today at israelpolicyforum.org/support. As always, I encourage everyone to subscribe to our podcast, Israel Policy Pod, sign up to receive the weekly Koplo column in your email inbox, and visit our website to access recordings of our previous briefings. And of course, I want to wish everyone a Shana Tova, Gemar Chatima Tova. Please stay tuned for an announcement regarding our next video briefing. Until then, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you soon. And Ohad, tishmor al atzmacha.
Thank you so much.
We will definitely have you on again. Thank you so much, and be well. Toda.
Take care. Thank you so much.